Hello and welcome to New Earth Awakening. Today, we welcome to the show Rosa Carson, who helps you love your whole self so you have the courage and power to embody the dream in your heart. She combines nervous system recalibration, psychological reprogramming, and ancient spiritual technologies to help leaders reclaim authority and stop outsourcing power. Her work is for people who've built impressive lives that secretly feel like cages and are ready to lead change with embodied sovereignty and creative freedom in a rapidly changing world. Rosa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. It is a delight and honor.
Thank you very much. Please, Rosa, tell us a little bit more about your journey and how it led you to the work you're doing today.
Yeah, thank you. The people I'm here to serve are the people who are where I have been. I'm sure you see this all the time, but I believe that the challenges each of us goes through are the experiences we need to then be able to help people who are on their own version of the same path. So my journey is one where in so many ways I got hooked on living up to external expectations, living up to the story the outer world told about who I was supposed to be and how I was supposed to be. And I was really good at it for so much of my life. I was a great student. I was the good girl. I was awesome at living up to other people's expectations. But what I didn't realize when I was busy doing that was that I was abandoning my own heart and my own truth. So I, in layer after layer, I have peeled back the living up to the story the outer world wants me to live to come home to what is true for me, which is that I don't want to get the good grades or get the exceeds expectations if it means that I'm leaving any part of myself behind. And I likewise have had that journey with regards to spirituality and my spiritual gifts, as so many of us shut those down in my adolescence because I got the sense that, you know, you were we would have to be foolish to believe in something other than what you can touch and feel. And I was like, well, I don't want to be foolish, right? Like I'm a sensible, smart person. And it is only in the past 10 years that starting with meditation, I I began to dissolve my certainty about what is real. And from there have developed more and more faith, and I still feel like such a baby on the journey. But I also see that these times are calling us to move in a new way that is also connected to ancient ways, and that because of my journey, that's part of what I am here to guide and lead and offer.
Awesome. I really love that. I so relate to that. So,
Well, so many of us do, like it is a lucky few who awaken to their connection to spirit in childhood and get to keep it. And I think, one of the sort of overarching philosophies I take is, or beliefs that I hold, is that existence is perfect. And so when I look at things that feel imperfect to me, I ask, okay, if existence is perfect, what is the gift of this? And there is something powerful about losing something and regaining it, right? We'll come back again, I think, to this theme of rupture and repair that is built into how nature works, right? Like even the Big Bang is a rupture. And, and, and that is part of how nature unfolds and makes itself more majestic and mysterious and diverse and alive. And so I think that's part of the adventure of life, even though sometimes when you're in it, it's like, Oh, I wouldn't mind if it was a little less adventurous.
Yeah, I totally get that. So let's dive right into your definition of ego. I'm going to tell you a little bit how I see that or how I describe that. So it's basically this part of you that is the maps, the Google Maps of navigating in this earth plane. You see a tiger, you run. You have this preference, that preference. And so on and so forth. So, what is your definition of the ego, and what role does it play with Entangled? What you were saying about everything is always perfect, because that was also one of the most powerful messages I've received.
Ego, gosh. The way that I think of ego is sort of one and the same with the mind. I often call it the small self, right? It's the personality that gets formed through conditioning, through the relationships with our families and caregivers, and then because of the way the earth school works, you think that that is you. And then when you start to wake up, you start to recognize that that is part of you, but also is separate from you. And that's where things start to get very funny. So I think of the ego in a similar way to how I think of the body as part of me, but not part of me. Necessary. It has its gifts and it has its limitations. And the more I understand myself to be the sort of awareness that is leading the whole system, the more I can relate to the ego as information, um, as like a part that gets to enjoy and gets to be here. Like I'm not here to eradicate the ego, um, but I am here to right size the ego, right? It it wants to be huge. It wants to be everything. In the same way that Google Maps wants you to think that it has all the information you need about getting where you need to go, right? But but existence knows that there is more. And when I can let the ego just be right-sized, then I can be available for the more that I don't know about yet.
I like this description of yours. I tend to say the ego needs to be incorporated or integrated or something like that, but like perfect sized is also a good
Yeah.
description, like, yes, I totally get it. And when you were saying about that Google Maps wants you to believe that it has all ways and all answers, I totally love that. That's why some people have landed in the water somewhere because they thought
Yes.
it was a street or something.
Yes. Yes. Like we know more than our minds want us to think we know. It's funny to try to talk about it, right? Because language is very mental and reality is so much bigger. Um, but when, for me and on my journey, I really used what we know for sure as like walls to keep out the unknown. And the truth is that the unknown is almost everything, right? Like compared to everything that there is to know, humanity will never know a single thing because we're so tiny and existence is so vast. But the mind finds safety and the ego finds safety in the known. And so it uses what we know as a barrier. And the more I can just be like, no, there are some things that maybe I know, but there's a lot I don't know. And if I can be open to it not making sense, not fitting in, then everything gets a little easier, you know? Like I get softer. I can flow with existence a little more. I can treat it all more like a game. I can have the experiences of the ego without making them about me. And and then it just like is more is more fun, which I really think is one of the main things that we're here for is fun.
Thank you very much, because that aligns totally with my experience. Joy is key, curiosity as well. What may pop
Yes.
up? Is this going to be funny, 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 or not so funny, funny, funny? Just afterwards funny.
Yeah. Yes.
For
Oh
the
my gosh.
ego.
So
Yeah.
often it's only funny later, isn't it? Oh,
Well, I've come to into situations where I was like, are you kidding me? Is like, really? Is this really happening? Like, excuse me? Couldn't you just send a WhatsApp message and let me know? Like,
yes.
learn to use a phone, man.
Uh, gosh, just send me a message, right? Oh, the way that my intuition and my spiritual gifts work is is more mysterious. I have some friends who they receive verbal messages that are very clear, go here, do this, and I long for that. Because for this exact reason, right? Just send me a message. And of course, what I've come to learn is that I am being sent messages, but they require me to pay attention. They require me to let my hands off the wheel and let it be a little more weird, a little more intuitive, a little less clear. But I want God to be more like Google Maps.
That's so funny. I love that. Oh man. Yeah, well, it's like at the core, we know exactly why it's going on. So it's like, sometimes I get like this, oh, come on, don't play like dumb or something. Come on.
Totally. Yeah. And it's funny, you can know and not know at the same time, right? It's part of the journey of faith, I think, right? And I feel like really my spiritual awakening is limited only by my journey of faith. That the more faith I can have, that it doesn't have to make sense, that I know what I know, that what I know is like that there is an isness to it. um, the more open I am, the more I can trust, the more I can flow and be in surrender and the state of grace that I think is, at least for me, is where I want to just spend all my time. But the ego, the mind is like, no, I need to know. And so the journey of faith is for me like the gate and the birth canal for my spiritual awakening.
And I love what you just touched upon is basically this illusion of duality, of polarity that lets us believe that there is a right or wrong or something down those lines, you know?
Yes.
And it's like, nope. So, how do you integrate this wisdom into your daily life in certain situations?
Mm, mm. Oh, what a great question. The first thing that's coming to mind is that I have really slowed down since committing myself to this spiritual journey. I used to get so much of my sense of worth and belonging from doing all the things, trying to be all things to all people, always chasing the exceeds expectations. Um, I would make a long to-do list at the beginning of the day and be committed to getting through it. And now I understand that I need to leave room for serendipity. I need to leave room for the unknown, and that what I want and what feels most delicious and aligned for me is not about doing more. It's about being more fully present. And that is about trusting that I'm enough, right? And that existence is enough, and that what my mind thinks I need to do, what my mind thinks it knows, is just a little bit of the information that's available for me. So that is just like a on the one hand small, but on the other hand, it just like moves throughout everything I do, this notion of moving more slowly and trusting that with alignment, everything that I want can come to me more easily. It's like the other part of that is it lets me take my hands off the wheel of thinking that I have to make everything happen, which, I know I'm not alone in just feeling like, oh, I've got to be the one who figures it all out and makes it all happen, as a business owner, like, oh, I've got to go out and hustle and get clients and find them and like convince them to be with me and work with me. And of course, anyone I come to with that kind of energy is going to be like, whoa, back off. And and anyone I coach when I'm in that kind of energy, what I'm going to be supporting them in doing is moving in this fearful, controlling way. So, so trusting that I'm okay, existence is okay, my clients are okay, my friends are okay, and that we get to enjoy our lives, like that is really at the center of, like, that's the gift of faith and trust.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And with this, we are already at the topic of the new earth, right?
Mm,
So
yes.
let's talk about the importance of sensitivity moving forward with this new earth and all the gifts that sensitivity gives us. How do you see sensitivity um, in a way as a gateway towards the new earth?
Yes. Yes. So the way that I see the new earth, and I I tend to think of it's the new earth versus, I don't like saying the old earth because of course the earth itself is the gift, is the mother. But I think of the machine or empire, right? This construction of humanity that we have built up that attempts to separate us from the natural flow of existence. So those are the two. And when I think about the new earth and like every single one of us is in every moment has one foot in the machine and one foot in the new earth. The machine is dominated by the energies of fear, domination, control, hierarchy. And the new earth is led and fed by the energies of love, connection, trust, embodiment, like our natural aliveness, right? So as we move through our days, we are either embodying the machine or the new earth. And the way we know is through our sensitivity, through our feelings, and through our connection with existence. We experience that connection in our bodies and in the senses that move through our bodies. And I believe that everyone is sensitive, but because the the training of Earth School, the conditioning that we all experience is so traumatizing. Even small traumas, uh think about how many babies are sleep trained by being let to cry it out, right? That is deeply, deeply traumatizing. A baby doesn't have the ability to soothe itself, to make itself okay. And when when we are, because that happened to me too, when we are put in that position, the only way that our little bodies can care for themselves is by shutting down sensitivity, by cutting off that sensitivity because it's too much. And we go through traumas through our whole childhoods. The way we teach kids is traumatizing. We put these energetic little bodies into boxes in rooms and say, sit still, and this is how you learn. No, we're creatures of the earth. We should be out moving and experiencing with our whole bodies. So our whole experience, all of that trauma shuts down our sensitivity. And so part of awakening to the new earth is reclaiming that sensitivity, celebrating it. I don't know about you, but when I was young, a lot of people in my family made fun of how sensitive I was. I got criticized. Oh, Rosa, you're so sensitive. When I would notice things in relationships that didn't feel right. Oh, you're just being sensitive. Very dismissive. So it's a battle to reclaim your sensitivity, to even allow yourself to feel what you feel, and then to believe what you feel. And that is essential on this journey to the new earth, because it is your sensitivity, it is each of our sensitivity that let you know in this moment what is the choice that takes me toward the new earth. And the way that you know is that it feels better. Feeling good is nature's guidance system for us, right? Like, it feels good to eat when you're hungry. It feels good to move your body in healthy ways. It feels good to be in connection with the natural world. It feels good to lean against a tree. It feels good to hug a friend. Feeling good is our guidance system. But we also need to learn discernment, because in this traumatizing journey, part of what we have learned is that things that feel bad feel good. We've learned that self-abandonment feels good because that's what gave us safety in this challenging time in our lives. So this is why so much of the work that I do is focused on the nervous system and recognizing that your body always knows what's right, but you have to learn to work with it and recognize that your body and your mind need healing from these traumatizing experiences so that you can know what really feels good and not just follow the path of what's familiar, which has a way of feeling good, but also has a way of feeling bad. So that's how our sensitivity is our anchor and guide to the new earth in every moment.
Thank you very much. And I want to dive deeper into this last part of discernment and basically inner child work or shadow work, whatever word you prefer, to learn that people pleasing may have been very secure in the past environment that we have now outgrown, but is fear based, and how to move into letting go of that fear and dropping into the heart center and loving ourselves, honoring our own needs, our own values, and moving forward with our needs and values present so that we can honor ourselves and honor others, right? Full cup, you
Yes.
can give.
Yes. 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 And all of us are connected. So we always, I love the full cup metaphor, but I also like to think of myself as a spring of water, like coming up out of the earth. And when I'm connected, then the water is just flowing naturally, abundantly, and it flows from the mountaintop all across the land, right? And you can use this metaphor in many different ways, but that connection does require that we be open and that we allow ourselves to not make as much sense according to the world around us. And as you say, it requires this discernment. And I'm so glad that you mentioned shadow work, inner child work. I think of myself not as a person, but as a collective of infinite beings inside me. And also that I am this awareness who's sort of steering and guiding them. And one of my absolute core philosophies is that no one gets left behind. No one inside and no one outside. right? Like the machine wants us to be living in division and rejection. It wants us to sever relationships and send people off into the barren unknown. And part of how we heal is by recognizing that even the parts of ourselves that we don't like, they belong and they're doing their best as they understand it to take care of us. And so for me, the work of shadow work or of inner child healing is about making room for the parts of myself that I don't like, the parts of myself that don't like, and recognizing that I am big enough to contain all of them. And as I'm sure you and many of your listeners know, that is activating to the nervous system, to the body. And so coming to recognize that caring for the body, that pouring love into the body and getting curious in any moment, like, hey, body, how can I take care of you even better in this moment? Like, what do you need to be healthy and well? And and I think of all the spiritual practices I do as doing making my inner space larger and clearing out the crap that I put into it so that I have more and more space and spaciousness inside me. And then there's less and less noise. So when you start, and I'm curious if this was true for you, but when I began my spiritual journey, there was so much noise and so little trust. And then you go on this spiral journey and you cover the same territory again and again. And each time you're in a slightly different place. You have slightly more trust. You have a bit more room. And then you can be more and more present. And the more present you are, the more water can come up through that spring. And the more easeful things are, even when they're not going well. You know, I had an experience this week where I asked a question on a message board and I immediately got two responses that were very confrontational and activating. And I felt this hot energy come up through my body, and a past version of me would probably have like written a really angry response and sort of picked a fight and explained myself and justified. And in that moment, I was like, oh, this is energy that needs to be felt, that needs to move through. These people's comments have nothing to do with me. I don't have to make it about me. I can breathe. I can love my tender inner kids who are having a big reaction, who have their feelings hurt by these comments. And then I can let it go. Think of the time I saved. Think of the fighty, confrontational energy I didn't put into the world. Think of the names I didn't call anyone, including the names I didn't call myself. You know, I didn't call myself, oh, you're so sensitive. Why are you making such a big deal? It was like, it's a big deal here because it's a big deal and I get to show up for myself. And that is the work of developing discernment and like recognizing every mistake also gets to be perfect, right? I don't want to make mistakes, but I'm going to make mistakes because that's the journey of life. So how do I make the best of it? How do I not make myself wrong for making mistakes? How do I treat myself the way I would treat my most beloved friend? And that is the core of like inner freedom and inner alignment.
Thank you very much. I love that. And, I just want to say that what you just shared is very, very powerful. For me, the journey into spirituality, basically, was because I had an NDE as a child and I was already activated, a little bit different. Because first of all, I started looking into science, psychology, and all of that stuff that was normal, that was real, and not the crazy stuff that was within me and all of that. So took several activations until I was really fully able to embrace this fragmented part of me. Because that's exactly what you were saying, a multitude of rosas. Yeah, Rosa is the flower, the rose, right? So I love
Yes.
this picture as well. And yeah, this multitude of cuddles here as well, they also needed to be nurtured, right? And each one
Yeah.
has its own needs, and all those are valid. So there we go back to what you just said. So thank you very much for sharing this. I think this is a very important message for us to move forward in embodiment. So having that said, what is for you going from survival into sovereignty, from chronic overfunctioning, as you put it in your website, from self betrayal to people pleasing? Do you have some tool for the audience right here, right now? Maybe a journaling prompt, a meditation, something that helped you on your journey of self discovery?
Gosh, there are so many, so many. The What's coming to mind right now is a journaling practice that is a conversation between you and whatever part you are struggling with, right? I have a long history of people pleasing, which I now understand to be a control strategy, to be a strategy of manipulating the people around me for my own safety. And first of all, I hold that manipulative part of myself in so much love and compassion. She was working so hard to keep us safe in the best way that she learned. And so that is one thing I really want to offer everyone is everything you might think is wrong with you is a wise coping mechanism that you developed because of circumstances that were out of your control when you were small, and that you are always doing your best. So there's nothing wrong with you. And if you see now that that's not working for you, wonderful. Now you're a grown, aligning person and you can relate to it differently. And that the best way to do that is to love yourself through it. So the journaling practice is when there is a part of you who is acting out or behaving in a way that you're frustrated about or that you're in resistance to, oh, why am I sabotaging myself? Or why am I getting in my own way? Or why won't I show up to do the things that are so important for me to do? Um, why am I abandoning myself? I'll just sit down with my journal and write to that part. Even if I don't know who the part is, I'll just say, hey, self, here's what I'm seeing. Here's how I'm feeling so frustrated. What do I need to know? What do you want to share with me in this moment? And then I allow that part to speak through, for me, automatic writing is absolutely the best way that this comes through. I know some people who do it with their voice, and the voice is so powerful. So if that works for you, you can do it that way as well and sort of have a conversation. Um, but but have a journaled conversation and find out what comes through. That part will speak, then you can hold it in love and empathy and compassion, not trying to talk it out of its experience or how it feels, but just, man, it is so reasonable that you feel that way. And thank you so much for telling me. What else do I need to know? Or how can I take care of you? And maybe it will have some questions for you. I often find that these parts have a request for some way that I can show up for them in a regular practice for the next week or month. In fact, yesterday I got in touch with a very rageful part of myself, just a part that has been feeling very oppressed. And one of the things that part asked for is that I, for the next week, spend a few minutes a day embodying rage. So I'm somatically allowing rage to move through my body. This morning before we got on this call, I I just like let rage come up and then I threw myself on my bed and had like kicking my arms and legs tantrum like I was a little kid, and just 5 minutes. That was all it took. I'll do it again tomorrow. I'll do it every day for a week. And that way, these parts know that you'll show up for them. They know they don't have to be perfect. They know that you love and accept them, even when you also feel frustrated with them. Then you can work with the frustration in the same way. And this is just such a wonderful passion and peace building practice that is also sort of creative and lets you and your intuition be the guide in how to move through it.
I love that. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's so powerful.
I love it.
It's like it's not suppressing it anymore because it's been suppressed. That's exactly the thing here. It wants to come out and to tell you the message, the information behind it. You need to understand the message and the information, engage in it with discernment and just move through it. I love that. Thank you, Rosa. And that
Yes,
leads us to
yes.
my next question, which is basically about this kind of discrepancy that we can feel when we see that on an human level. This is makes us angry, maybe. We feel anger, we feel this, we feel that, whatever it may be, right? But on a
Mhm.
higher level, our higher self is like, yo, what's the information? This is the information. This is what needs to be. This is the value behind it. The value is not being met. This need is also not being met. So that's the thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, yes, on a human level, you can feel whatever it feels like. Yes, hurtful or angry or whatever. But yes, it is not suppressing that, honoring that, but also honoring that on a higher level, this is helping you rise up. So
Yes.
how do you would engage into this topic?
Yeah, yeah. Well, for me, and I know for so many other people, there's such a temptation to bypass, right? To, oh, here's an uncomfortable feeling, and especially early in my spiritual journey, I sort of felt like, "Oh, I'm supposed to rise above it." And I didn't recognize that, the metaphor that I find most supportive for understanding life and reality is that each of us is God, right? And that God has entered this embodiment to have experiences. Well, listen, if God only wanted to have good experiences, there would only be good things in life, right? Like God is here for it all. And 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 so understanding that gives me some space to stop making anger wrong, right? Or any feeling that I disprefer. It is okay that I disprefer it. Even that dispreferring is part of what God wants to experience, right? If if we didn't find some aspects of life aversive, there would be no drama to it, right? You need the tension, you need that friction to make it interesting. So, okay, here we are. We are on a very interesting ride. And so for me, the like not making not making anger wrong, not making disappointment wrong. And then that opens the door for me to actually allow it, to embody it, and to receive the gift of it. But for me in my journey, and for so many of the people that I work with, we have to go through that gate again and again, actually, of recognizing that anger has arisen, that we have habitually and reflexively shoved it down out of a sense of, oh, I'm going to be above that, or I don't want to feel that. It's uncomfortable. Inviting it back up and recognizing, actually, the things I'm angry about, I am right to be angry about. As you say, it is a conflict with my values, or there's something out of alignment. I'm in the United States. I think there is a lot of very good reason for people to be angry right now, right? And when we shut our anger down, we traumatize ourselves. We put a, harmful energy into our bodies that makes us sick. And we disempower ourselves from recognizing it is right to be angry in the face of injustice. My power and my anger are one and the same. It is right to allow anger to flow. And I had an experience some years ago where I was in a conflict with a friend, and she said something that made me very angry. And I had a moment of starting to shove it down. And then I sort of let it come up, and I felt this like sparkly energy come up through my throat, and the words just came out my mouth almost without me thinking them, that just spoke the truth that I was experiencing in that moment. And it totally transformed the conflict that we were having. And that would not have happened if I'd shut myself down. So my anger is a gift, and your anger is a gift. And we have to learn to allow it to flow freely so it doesn't come out sideways. Because anger, when it's shut down or when we try to control it or clamp down on it, that's when it becomes destructive. It becomes destructive to us on the inside through self-criticism or self-negation, or it becomes destructive to the people outside of us because we point the anger at them instead of allowing the anger to flow through in a way that embraces the whole relationship, whether it's a one-on-one relationship or a society-wide.
Love that. Thank you. Exactly. It's like you are conscious about your anger, but you just let it move through you and you speak your truth. You say,
Yes,
not like this. This is not okay for me. And that's it. Let it out.
that's right. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, I think that ties into this kind of self betrayal that we learn as children. That is basically about regulating other people's nervous system by not speaking our truth, by trying to not say something that will enrage the other person or something like that, so that we can stay safe as children.
Yes.
But then we
Yes.
can move on like this into adulthood until we realize, okay, this is really not serving us, and then we can work on that. Thank you. I love that. So, Rosa, I also wanted to speak about your magical journey with the fairies and
Mm,
this name that you have given yourself, gifted yourself with, the fairy godmother. Please
yes.
talk about that.
Yes. Yes. So I have always, at least in my adulthood, I've always identified as a fairy godmother. I have a sort of playful, magical orientation even before I began my spiritual journey. And I am not myself a mother. I've never felt the call to have kids, but I love kids, and I have always loved like being on the childlike level, right? To bring that kind of creativity. And so identifying as a fairy godmother is about being open to magic and mystery and playfulness, and also, this notion of fairies. To me, fairies are mysterious nature energies, right? And it, when you look at stories of fairies from around the world, sometimes people wonder, oh, are they fireflies, or are they, other insects, or and I think that the magic of nature expresses itself in so many mysterious ways, and that you get to find out by experimenting and relating to fairies as part of that mystery. They're playful, they're mischievous. Sometimes they help, sometimes they seem like they're getting in the way, right? Like sometimes they're bringing that sort of trickster energy. Um, and isn't that nature, right? So for me, relating to fairies is largely about having a playful and open and curious relationship with the energies of nature, inviting them into how I move, how I be, how I create, and 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 never letting myself land on thinking I know how things work.
Thank you very much. I love that. I love fairies too. The representant here loved your explanation
Mhm.
as well.
Oh, good.
So thank you for
You're
sharing
so
that.
welcome. Yeah.
Rosa, my last question is the maybe most important question right now. How do you envision the new earth that is being co-created by all of us right here, right now?
Yes. Yes. I feel so hopeful and optimistic because of the vision and understanding I have for the new earth. So again, going back to this big question or framework of if existence is perfect, then how is what we are experiencing right now perfect? And again, here in the United States, things are very difficult. And it's easy to look at the surface level of the material reality and feel quite hopeless. But to me, one of the core patterns that we see across all of existence is this pattern of rupture and repair. That the old has to die away for the new to be born. And that is what I see happening. Humanity has built this vast global civilization where we pretend that we are not part of the living flow of existence. And one of the images I work with is, there are those insects that they have one form early in their life and then they shed their shell and they take a new form and then the old shell just is there in its shape that the insect moved away from. I believe that that is what humanity is in the process of doing, that we are leaving this shell of a civilization that trains us into self-abandonment and self-betrayal and alienating each other, rejecting ourselves, rejecting each other. For whatever reason, and maybe we'll get to find out what that reason is over time, this journey was necessary for humanity to take a new shape. That we were born in this one form and we grew up and created a shell that was that shape. And now moving towards the new earth is leaving that shell behind. And I believe that this is the journey of leveling up to achieve collective consciousness. And that's why so many people are having spiritual awakenings now. That's why so many people are finding their way into their own spiritual knowing. And this pressure that we are creating for ourselves collectively around the globe is creating the conditions that force awakening. Even neuroscience has shown that certain conditions create a likelihood of a spiritual awakening experience, and the pressure that we're creating for ourselves is exactly that. We know that we're all in this together, that there is no separation between you and me in reality, that we are all the universe experiencing itself. That is true whether you look at it scientifically or spiritually. And therefore, harm to any is harm to me. And it is inevitable that we will make conditions hard enough and bad enough that everyone has to be aware of that. And once we're all aware of it, it won't make sense to hurt each other anymore. And so we are in this journey. And I see that part of my mission, and I think that part of your mission too, is helping people wake up sooner so we can get to the gift of this pressure cooker with the minimum suffering possible. Suffering seems to be necessary for this journey. It's part of the experience God is here to have. So what if we can open our hearts to it and welcome the gifts as a result?
Thank you very much. Do you have any parting messages for the audience?
I want everyone who is listening to know that you are perfect, that you have everything you need to have the life that your heart longs for, that you don't have to and you can't do it all alone, and that as you become available to it, the journey gets to be wonderful, unless you want it to be a journey of struggle, which that also gets to be your own version of wonderful, right? Nothing about you is wrong. And you have everything you need to create the life of your dreams and the world of your dreams. And that by choosing your own thriving and what's right for you, you naturally and effortlessly do what's right for everyone you're in relationship with.
Thank you very much, Rosa. And we will be posting your links below, including your free meditation gift for the audience. So thanks for that. And namaste, sister.
Thank you so much. What a gift this conversation has been.